First contact. The vastness of space. The Xyloth survey frigate Tiskvarl drifted through the silent void at the edge of an unexplored star system. Commander Zixkull studied the readouts on the holoprojector with a critical eye. The system's yellow star was unremarkable, with a smattering of barren rocks and gas giants orbiting it. But the third planet from the star had caught Zixkull's attention. "What have we here?" Zixkull muttered, zooming in on the blue-green world. Scans showed liquid water, a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, and most intriguingly, signs of civilization. Lights glittered on the dark side of the planet, hinting at cities. Orbital infrastructure was minimal. A handful of primitive satellites, but no space stations or shipyards. A pre-spaceflight civilization, surmised Sub-Commander Grusnak, Zixkull's second-in-command. "Shall we report it to the Imperial Survey Corps?" Zixkull considered for a moment. This was the find of a lifetime, an inhabited world, ripe for conquest by the Xyloth Empire. Zixkull's mandibles twitched with anticipation at the thought of the glory and rewards the discovery would bring. "No," Zixkull replied. "This planet is too perfect. If we report it, the bureaucrats and admirals will tie it up for cycles. I say we claim it for ourselves. With a primitive civilization like this, we hardly need to wait for the fleet. A single battle cruiser could take this planet. An insignificant world. On the planet's surface, life went on as usual for the inhabitants of the unremarkable world they called Terra. Unaware of the avarice their humble home had inspired in a distant alien commander, Terrans went about their daily routines. In the megacity of New Carthage, Aaron Shaw rushed through the crowded streets, dodging pedestrians and street vendors. The young xenoanthropologist was late for a meeting at the Global Science Council. Aaron's research on the possibility of extraterrestrial life had long been met with skepticism from the scientific establishment, but a new discovery had finally gained traction. Bursting into the council chambers, Aaron was met by a room full of grim-faced scientists and military officers. General Vance Brennan, head of Terran Global Security, motioned for Aaron to sit. "Dr. Shaw, thank you for joining us," Brennan said. "We've called this emergency meeting because of your area of expertise. At 800 hours this morning, our deep space monitoring network detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. An object moving under power. We think it's a spacecraft." The room erupted in murmurs and excited whispers. Aaron felt a thrill run down her spine. Could this really be happening? After all these years of searching and hoping, had humanity finally made contact with an alien intelligence? The day everything changed. Zixkull stood on the bridge of the Xyloth battlecruiser Gregnar as it emerged from hyperspace on the outskirts of the Terran system. A week had passed since the initial discovery, and Zixkull had wasted no time in assembling a small but formidable force to conquer the primitive world. As the Gregnar approached Terra, Zixkull was surprised to detect a flurry of activity from the planet. Electromagnetic signals pulsed between the surface and small orbital satellites. Ships were launching from the surface, taking up defensive positions. It seemed the Terrans had detected their approach. "No matter," Zixkull said confidently. "They are primitives. They will pose no challenge to us. Open a channel to the planet." On screens and holodisplays across Terra, an alien face appeared. Zixkull's insectoid features, all sharp angles and glistening chitin, stared out at the people of Terra. When the alien spoke, its voice was harsh and guttural. "Inhabitants of this world, I am Commander Zixkull of the Xyloth Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. Lay down your arms and surrender immediately, or face annihilation." There was a moment of shocked silence across Terra. Then, to the surprise of Zixkull and the Xyloth, a response came from the Terran side. General Brennan's weathered face appeared on the screen, his jaw set in determination. "This is General Vance Brennan of Terran Global Security. We do not recognize your claim to our world. We will not surrender. Any hostile action against Terra will be met with the full force of our defenses. Leave now or prepare for war." Zixkull was taken aback. These were not the pleas for mercy or offerings of capitulation the Xyloth were used to from primitive species. There was steel in this Terran's voice. No matter. The Xyloth would crush them like insects. The fires of defiance. As the Krakenar and its escorts opened fire, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts and missiles against the Terran orbital defenses, the people of Terra realized their world had changed forever. Across the planet, long-dormant emergency protocols sprang into action. Sirens wailed as civilians were rushed to underground shelters. Defense forces scrambled to their posts. In the streets of New Carthage, Erin Shaw watched in awe and terror as the sky lit up with explosions. "So it begins," Erin whispered to herself. "The day we always knew would come. The day we meet the galaxy and find ourselves woefully unprepared." But even as the Xyloth rained destruction on Terra from orbit, the people of Terra did not cower. They did not beg. In the face of annihilation, they chose to fight. Across the planet, a bold fire was lit in the hearts of Terrans. They would not go quietly into the night. If this was to be their end, they would make it an end worthy of remembrance. The Xyloth had expected an easy conquest. What they found was a species ready to fight to the last breath for their home. In bunkers and command centers across Terra, military leaders and scientists began to plan, to strategize, to devise ways to strike back against the invaders. The road ahead would be long and bloody, but Terra would not fall without a fight. And in that first defiant roar of Terran resistance, a spark was lit that would blaze into a beacon of hope for all the oppressed species of the galaxy. On that fateful day, the Xyloth made a grave mistake. They challenged the indomitable spirit of humanity, and humanity would rise to that challenge, forged in the fires of war into something unbreakable. The battle for Terra had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Terra fights back. The Siege of Terra. In the days following the Xyloth invasion, Terra was transformed into a battleground. Xyloth dropships disgorged hordes of heavily armed shock troopers into the streets of Terran cities. The alien soldiers, encased in advanced battle armor and wielding plasma rifles, expected the primitive Terrans to break and run before their onslaught. Instead, they found themselves embroiled in a savage urban conflict unlike any they had encountered before. Terran defense forces, though outmatched in technology, fought with tenacity and ingenuity. They turned the winding streets and towering skyscrapers of their cities into deadly kill zones, using their knowledge of the terrain to even the odds. Snipers picked off Xyloth officers from rooftops. Improvised explosive devices turned Xyloth convoys into flaming wrecks. In the ruins of once proud metropolises, Terran soldiers and citizen militias waged a desperate guerrilla war against the invaders. Above in orbit, the Xyloth fleet continued its bombardment of Terran positions. But even here, the Terrans struck back. Jury-rigged missiles, cobbled together from the remnants of Terra's modest space program, launched from hidden silos and streaked towards the Xyloth ships. Most were intercepted by the ship's point defense systems, but a few found their mark, sending Xyloth frigates and destroyers tumbling out of orbit in flames. The Xyloth, used to quick, decisive victories over inferior foes, were stunned by the ferocity of Terran resistance. Each day, they poured more troops and weapons into the battle, determined to crush the defiant primitives. And each day, the Terrans met them with unbreakable resolve, fighting for every inch of their home. Ingenuity and desperation. In a secure bunker beneath the war-torn streets of New Carthage, Erin Shaw pored over fragments of Xyloth technology, salvaged from the wreckage of downed enemy craft. Around her, a team of Terran scientists worked feverishly to unravel the secrets of the advanced alien devices. "The Xyloth may have more advanced tools," Erin said, "but we have something they lack: the drive to innovate, to imagine, to create. They're stagnant, complacent in their superiority. We'll show them what human ingenuity can do." Under Erin's guidance, the Terran scientists began to reverse engineer the captured Xyloth tech. Bit by bit, they uncovered the principles behind the aliens' energy weapons, their propulsion systems, their communications networks. In hidden factories and underground labs across Terra, this knowledge was put to use. Terran soldiers soon found themselves armed with reverse-engineered plasma rifles, capable of burning through Xyloth armor. Hacked Xyloth communications devices allowed Terran forces to intercept enemy transmissions and coordinate their resistance. In the skies above Terra, a new generation of Terran fighters, equipped with salvage Xyloth anti-gravity engines, challenged the alien invaders for control of the air. The tide of battle began to turn. The Xyloth, once confident of swift victory, now found themselves mired in a costly and prolonged conflict. Each day, more Terran innovations found their way to the front lines, each one a testament to the unyielding spirit and resourcefulness of humanity. Turning point. In orbit around Terra, Commander Zix seethed with frustration aboard the bridge of the Kragnar. The conquest of this primitive world should have been a simple matter, a footnote in the glorious history of the Xyloth Empire. Instead, the stubborn Terrans had turned it into a humiliating quagmire. "We should burn their cities to ash from orbit," hissed Sub-Commander Grusnak. "Teach these primitives the price of defiance." "No," Zix snapped. "The Emperor wants this world intact, its resources and population subjugated but exploitable. We will crush their resistance, but we will do it on the ground, face to face. The galaxy will see the superiority of the Xyloth warrior caste." But even as Zix spoke, warning klaxons blared through the ship. On the view screens, a swarm of small, agile craft were rising from the planet's surface, rocketing towards the Xyloth fleet. They moved with impossible speed and grace, outmaneuvering the lumbering Xyloth ships with ease. "Impossible," whispered Grusnak. "Those craft, they're using our technology." The Terran fighters, armed with plasma cannons and shielded by stolen Xyloth energy fields, tore into the Xyloth fleet with vengeful fury. The Kragnar shuddered under the onslaught, its hull breached in a dozen places. Zix could only watch in disbelief as the pride of the Xyloth Navy was reduced to a floating wreck by a handful of primitive ships. Across Terra, a ragged cheer went up as news of the orbital victory spread. In the ruins of New Carthage, Erin Shaw allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Terrans had struck a blow against the invaders, shown them that humanity would not be cowed. But the war was far from over. The Xyloth were still entrenched on Terran soil, and more ships would surely come. In that moment, as the wreckage of Xyloth ships burned in Terran skies, a cold determination settled over the people of Terra. They had tasted victory, and they hungered for more. The Xyloth had started this war, but by all the gods and stars, Terra would finish it. The fight for humanity's future had only just begun. Project Prometheus. The Forge of War. In the months following the orbital battle, the war on Terra entered a new phase. The Xyloth, their pride wounded by the loss of their ships, redoubled their efforts to crush Terran resistance. More troops, more weapons, more ships poured into the Terran system, turning the planet into a cauldron of endless battle. But the Terrans met this escalation with an escalation of their own. In hidden bases and underground laboratories, Terran scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to build upon the knowledge they had gleaned from captured Xyloth technology. Under the codename Project Prometheus, they sought to create weapons and machines that could match and exceed those of the invaders. Leading this effort was Erin Shaw. The young xenoanthropologist had proven to have a remarkable talent for understanding and adapting alien technology. Under her guidance, Project Prometheus made stunning breakthroughs at a pace that left even the Terrans' own military leadership in awe. "The key is in the power source," Erin explained to a gathering of Terran commanders. The Xyloth use a form of zero-point energy, harvesting the quantum fluctuations of the vacuum itself. We've managed to replicate the process, and it's opened up possibilities we never dreamed of. In the forges of Project Prometheus, a new arsenal for Terra's defense began to take shape. gravity drive engines capable of propelling ships at near relativistic speeds, energy shields that could withstand the fury of a nuclear blast, plasma cannons that could melt through the toughest Xyloth armor like a hot knife through butter. And at the heart of it all, the crown jewel of Project Prometheus, a ship, a warship unlike any Terra had ever seen, a vessel that could take the fight to the Xyloth on their own terms. Birth of the Prometheus. In a cavernous hangar hidden deep beneath the Terran Defense Force headquarters, Erin Shaw stood before a gathering of Terra's top military brass. Behind her, shrouded in shadows, loomed a massive shape. "Gentlemen," Erin said, her voice ringing with pride, "I present to you the future of Terran warfare, the TDS Prometheus." Lights flared to life, banishing the shadows and revealing the ship in all its glory. It was a sleek, deadly-looking craft, its hull a seamless blend of Terran and Xyloth design elements. It gleamed silver and black, bristling with weapons emplacements and sensor arrays. The assembled officers broke into a chorus of awed whispers. This was no mere ship. This was a symbol, an embodiment of Terran defiance and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. "The Prometheus is equipped with the most advanced technology we've developed," Erin continued. "Gravity drive, zero-point energy core, phase shielding. It can outrun, outfight, and outmaneuver anything the Xyloth have. And that's not all." Erin gestured to a group of figures emerging from the shadows around the ship. They were clad in sleek, form-fitting suits of armor, their faces hidden behind polarized visors. "Meet the Prometheus crew, our best and brightest, handpicked from every branch of the Terran Defense Force. They'd been training for months with the new tech. They're ready." As the armored figures took their positions around the ship, a hush fell over the hangar. For the first time since the war began, the Terrans dared to feel a flicker of hope. With the Prometheus and its crew, they finally had a chance to take the fight to the enemy, to make the Xyloth pay for every inch of Terran soil they had dared to invade. The infiltrators, far above Terra, hidden among the debris of destroyed ships and discarded equipment that littered the planet's orbit, a small, stealthy craft drifted. Inside, a team of Terran infiltrators, clad in the same advanced armor as the Prometheus crew, prepared for the most daring mission of the war. Their target, the Xyloth command ship, a massive dreadnought that served as the nerve center for the entire invasion force. If they could take it out, it would throw the Xyloth into chaos, giving the Terrans a chance to strike back and reclaim their world. Leading the team was Captain Jace Riker, a veteran soldier with a reputation for accomplishing the impossible. As he checked his weapons and ran through the mission plan one last time, he felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This was the chance he had been waiting for, the opportunity to strike a decisive blow against the hated Xyloth. But he knew the odds of success were slim, and the price of failure would be measured in Terran lives. "Remember the plan," he said to his team, his voice steady over the comlink. "We get in, we find the command center, we plant the charges, and we get out. Fast and quiet, just like we practiced." The infiltrator's ship, equipped with the same stealth technology that hid the Prometheus from enemy sensors, glided silently towards the Xyloth dreadnought. They had one chance to get this right, one chance to turn the tide of the war. As the ship slipped through the dreadnought's defenses and the infiltrators began their silent, deadly work, Captain Riker allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Xyloth thought they knew war. They thought they understood the depths of Terran resolve. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the heart of the enemy stronghold, Terra's hidden blades prepared to strike. The Prometheus stood ready to lead the charge, and across the planet, a battered but unbroken people looked to the stars, ready to reclaim their destiny. The true battle for Terra was about to begin. The tide turns. Flames in the sky. The Xyloth command ship hung in orbit over Terra like a bloated spider, its massive hull bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Inside its labyrinthine corridors, Xyloth officers and technicians went about their duties, confident in their superiority and the inevitability of their victory over the primitive Terrans. They never saw the infiltrators coming. Captain Jace Riker and his team struck like lightning, emerging from the shadows to sow chaos and destruction in the heart of the Xyloth stronghold. They moved through the ship like ghosts, their advanced armor rendering them all but invisible to the ship's security systems. Plasma rifles flared in the darkness, cutting down Xyloth warriors before they could even raise the alarm. In the command center, the Xyloth admiral barely had time to register the intruder's presence before a plasma bolt took him in the chest. As he crumpled to the deck, his officers frantically tried to organize a defense, but it was too late. Riker and his team were already in motion, planting explosive charges at key structural points throughout the ship. Charges set, Riker reported over the comm, his voice tense but controlled. All units, prepare for extraction. But as the infiltrators fought their way back to their ship, alarms began to blare throughout the Xyloth vessel. The Xyloth were slow to respond, but they were not entirely helpless. Security doors slammed shut, cutting off the infiltrators' escape routes. Warrior drones, heavily armed and shielded, converged on their position. Riker and his team fought like demons, their plasma rifles blazing, but the odds were against them. One by one, they fell, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the Xyloth forces. In the end, only Riker remained, wounded and cornered, but still defiant. "Prometheus, this is Riker," he said into his comm, his voice ragged with pain. "Mission accomplished. Charges are set, but I won't be making it back." On the bridge of the Prometheus, Erin Shaw heard Riker's words and felt a stab of anguish in her heart. She had handpicked Riker and his team, trained them, equipped them. Their loss was a bitter blow, but their sacrifice would not be in vain. "Understood, Captain," she said, her voice steady. "Your courage will not be forgotten." Prometheus out. Moments later, the Xyloth command ship vanished in a blinding flash of light as the infiltrators' charges detonated. The explosion tore the massive vessel apart, sending debris hurtling in all directions. On the planet's surface, Terrans looked up to see a new sun bloom in the sky, a beacon of hope and defiance. The loss of their command ship threw the Xyloth forces into disarray. Without central coordination, their attacks became disjointed, uncoordinated. The Terran Defense Force, led by the Prometheus, seized the opportunity, launching a series of daring counterattacks that drove the invaders back. In cities across the planet, Terran soldiers and militia rose up, emboldened by the sight of their enemies in retreat. They fought with renewed vigor, reclaiming their streets and homes block by bloody block. The tide of battle had turned, and the Xyloth found themselves on the defensive for the first time. A new hope. In the wake of the Xyloth command ship's destruction, a new energy swept through the Terran resistance. In hidden factories and shipyards across the planet, production of Prometheus-class ships and weapons was ramped up to a fevered pace. Terran soldiers, once forced to scavenge Xyloth tech, now found themselves armed with the most advanced weaponry their world had ever seen. The Prometheus itself became a rallying point, a symbol of Terran ingenuity and resilience. Under Erin Shaw's command, it led daring raids against Xyloth supply lines and staging areas, always staying one step ahead of the enemy's attempts to destroy it. In the halls of power, Terran leaders began to dare to dream of victory. What had once seemed like a hopeless last stand now took on the character of a true war of liberation. Plans were drawn up for a final offensive, a coordinated global assault that would drive the Xyloth from Terran soil once and for all. But even as hope blossomed, a new threat loomed. The Xyloth, their pride wounded by the upstart Terrans' defiance, were not about to accept defeat. In the depths of space, a new fleet was assembling, a vast armada that dwarfed anything that had come before. The Xyloth Emperor himself had decreed that the Terran insurrection was to be crushed, no matter the cost. News of the approaching armada spread like wildfire across Terra. Panic gripped many, the hard-won sense of hope giving way to despair. How could they hope to stand against such overwhelming force? But Aaron Shah and the leaders of the Terran Defense Force refused to give in to fear. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to falter now. If the Xyloth wanted a final battle, then a final battle they would have. Across Terra, the resistance mobilized for the fight to come. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was readied. In the great cities and the small towns, in the mountains and the deserts, the people of Terra prepared to make their stand. They knew the odds. They knew the risks. But they also knew what they were fighting for their homes, their families, their freedom, for the right to determine their own destiny, free from the yoke of alien tyranny. They would fight, and if necessary, they would die, but they would do so as free Terrans. As the Xyloth Armada neared the Terran system and the Prometheus and its sister ships took up their positions in orbit, a strange calm settled over the planet. The calm before the storm. Some called it the deep breath before the plunge. In that moment of stillness, the people of Terra looked to the stars, to the approaching enemy, and they knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. One world, one people, united in the face of annihilation. The final battle was upon them. The fate of Terra, and perhaps of the galaxy itself, would be decided in the fire and fury to come. And the Terrans, the once dismissed primitives, stood ready to meet that fate head-on, unafraid and unbowed. Terra ascendant, the gathering storm. In the skies above Terra, the Xyloth Armada emerged from hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their ships blotting out the stars. It was a force unlike any the Terrans had ever seen, a seemingly endless expanse of warships and fighters, transports and dreadnoughts. The very sight of it was enough to strike fear into the hearts of even the bravest Terran defenders. But they did not falter. They did not flee. As the alarm klaxons sounded across the planet and the defense forces scrambled to their posts, a grim determination settled over Terra. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the final stand against the alien invaders who had dared to threaten their home. In the cockpit of the Prometheus, Aaron Shah gripped the controls with white-knuckled intensity. Around her, the bridge crew worked with focused efficiency, their faces set in lines of steely resolve. They knew the odds they faced. They knew that many of them would likely not survive the coming battle. But they were ready to give everything, to sacrifice all, for the chance to save their world. "This is it," Aaron said, her voice steady over the comm. "This is what we've been fighting for. The Xyloth think they can crush us, but we're going to show them the true strength of Terra. We're going to make them regret ever setting foot on our world." A chorus of affirmatives echoed back over the comm as the Terran fleet, the Prometheus at its head, powered up their engines and weapons. On the planet's surface, soldiers manned their posts, militia fighters took up arms, and civilians huddled in bunkers and shelters, praying for deliverance. There was a moment of eerie calm as the two fleets faced each other across the void, a stillness that seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then, with a flash of energy weapons and a roar of engines, the battle was joined. The Crucible. Chaos reigned in the skies over Terra as the Xyloth and Terran fleets clashed in a titanic struggle for supremacy. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, missiles and torpedoes flew like swarms of angry hornets, and fighters danced and dueled in intricate ballets of death. At the heart of the maelstrom, the Prometheus fought like a cornered tiger, its weapons blazing, its shields flaring under the onslaught of enemy fire. Aaron Shah pushed the ship and its crew to their limits and beyond, executing daring maneuvers and impossible feats of piloting as she sought to exploit every weakness in the Xyloth formation. Around them, the rest of the Terran fleet fought with equal parts skill and desperation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they made the Xyloth pay for every inch of space, every ship lost. Terran cruisers rammed Xyloth dreadnoughts, sacrificing themselves to take out the larger vessels. Fighters flew suicide missions, plunging into the heart of the enemy fleet with holds full of explosives. Every Terran ship, every Terran life, was expended with a single goal in mind: the total defeat of the Xyloth invaders. But for all their valor, for all their sacrifice, it wasn't enough. Slowly, inexorably, the weight of Xyloth numbers began to tell. Terran ships fell by the dozens, then the hundreds, shattered hulks spinning into the void. The Prometheus itself, for all its advanced technology and brilliant crew, was battered and bleeding, its hull breached in a dozen places, its weapon systems failing one by one. In the ship's med bay, converted into a triage center for the flood of wounded, medics fought a losing battle to save the lives of their comrades. On the bridge, consoles exploded in showers of sparks and flame as the ship's systems overloaded under the strain of battle. Erin Shah, her face streaked with sweat and blood, knew that they were losing. The Xyloth were simply too many, their ships too powerful. For every enemy vessel they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. It was a battle of attrition, and it was a battle the Terrans could not win. But even in that moment of despair, as hope faded, and the fate of Terra seemed sealed, Erin and her crew refused to give up. They fought on, defiant to the last, determined to make the Xyloth remember this day, to etch the name of Terra in the annals of galactic history as the world that refused to die quietly. And then, just when all seemed lost, a miracle happened. Deus ex machina. Deep in the heart of the Prometheus, in a sealed chamber known only to a select few, a secret weapon lay dormant. It was the ultimate creation of Project Prometheus, a device born of desperation and genius, a fusion of Terran and Xyloth technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The zero-point projector. As the Prometheus shuddered under the unrelenting assault of the Xyloth fleet, Erin Shah made a decision. It was a choice born of desperation, a last roll of the dice in a game where the stakes were the very survival of her species. "Activate the ZPP," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Channel all remaining power to the projector. It's our only chance." In the heart of the ship, the ZPP hummed to life, its mechanisms spinning up to incredible speeds. On the bridge, the lights dimmed and consoles flickered as every last erg of energy was diverted to the weapon. The Xyloth, sensing that the Terrans were up to something, intensified their attack. Waves of fighters descended on the Prometheus, their weapons tearing into the ship's already damaged hull. In the midst of the onslaught, a single Xyloth dreadnought, the largest and most powerful ship in the Armada, broke through the Terran lines and bore down on the Prometheus like a predator moving in for the kill. But they were too late. With a blinding flash of light, the zero-point projector fired, a beam of pure, concentrated energy lancing out from the Prometheus and striking the heart of the Xyloth fleet. For a moment, space itself seemed to warp and twist around the beam, the very fabric of reality straining under the unimaginable forces being unleashed. And then, in a silent explosion that rippled across the void, the Xyloth ships simply ceased to be. One moment they were there, poised on the brink of victory. The next, they were gone, wiped from existence by a weapon beyond the comprehension of any race in the known galaxy. The silence that followed was deafening. On the bridge of the Prometheus, the crew stared in shock and awe at the empty space where the Xyloth fleet had been. They had done it. Against all odds, against all hope, they had won. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. The Prometheus, pushed beyond its limits by the demands of the ZPP, was dying. Its systems failed one by one, its hull integrity compromised beyond repair. Erin Shah, her face grim, gave the order to abandon ship. As escape pods jettisoned from the stricken vessel and the surviving Terran ships moved in to rescue their comrades, a strange sense of calm descended over the battlefield. The war was over, the Xyloth were defeated, Terra was free. But the price of that freedom had been high. The Prometheus, the ship that had been the symbol of Terran resistance, the embodiment of their indomitable spirit, was gone, sacrificed in the final desperate gambit for victory. And yet, as the people of Terra emerged from their bunkers and shelters to gaze up at the skies, Now free of the shadow of Xyloth oppression, they knew that the sacrifice had been worth it. They had faced the greatest challenge in their history, and they had emerged victorious, forged in the crucible of war into something stronger, something greater than they had ever been before. The road ahead would not be easy. Terra was battered and bleeding, its cities in ruins, its population decimated. But they would rebuild. They would heal. And they would remember. Remember the courage of those who had fought and died to defend their world. Remember the ingenuity and determination that had driven them to create the tools of their own salvation. Remember the day when the people of Terra stood as one against the darkness and proclaimed to the galaxy that they would not go quietly into the night. Terra had ascended, risen from the ashes of war to take its place among the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, as Terra healed and grew, the legend of the Prometheus and the heroes who had crewed her spread far and wide. Across the planet, monuments were raised and stories were told, tales of courage and sacrifice, of unity in the face of annihilation. And out among the stars, the races of the galaxy looked upon Terra with new eyes. No longer a backwater, no longer a primitive curiosity, but a force to be reckoned with, a player on the galactic stage. For the people of Terra, the scars of the war would never fully fade, but they would wear those scars with pride, as reminders of what they had endured and what they had achieved. They had looked into the face of oblivion, and they had not blinked. They had stood against the greatest power in the known universe, and they had emerged victorious. They were Terrans, and they would never be conquered.